Peter Grill achieves the title of the strongest man in the world, all to marry his sweet love, Lovelia. But his life gets really complicated when his future father-in-law, who is overly protective of his daughter, opposes their marriage. To add to the chaos, ladies from different races are interested in him and want to have some fun with him. A bright light comes from a door, opened for a blonde man in a warrior's armor. The blonde guy steps out into an arena filled with humans and, from what we can say, non-human spectators. As he steps on the fighting ring against a pig-like monster, the blonde guy thinks that if he wins this fight, he will get to be with a girl named Lovelia Sanctos, who I can bet is going to be the heroine of the show. The fight starts, and we get the introduction that the combat is happening on a faraway land to determine the strongest fighter of all time. He gets a bit of difficulty fighting that monster but wins the fight by slaying the beast's horn. The blonde guy is then introduced with the name of Peter Grill. After the match, Peter rushes to celebrate his victory with his loved ones, but suddenly he hears someone calling his name. Suddenly, Mimi appears, a girl with horns and a red-pink body. Mimi congratulates Peter for becoming the world's strongest man and asks for a favor to give her his seat. Yes, you heard it right. It shocks Peter. And Mimi reveals that in her ogre realm, having strong children is a big deal, and what's better than asking the world's strongest man to help her with it? Mimi's elder sister Lisa appears and tells Mimi to stop this nonsense. After hearing this, Peter sighs of relief, but not so fast since she also wants to have his seat. Lisa also reveals that at this moment, every nation wants Peter in order to create strong warriors, but Lisa won't allow it because she only wants her ogre family to have his child. The both girls corner Peter so they can kidnap him and take his juice, but he tricks them to look something up and sneaks away. Later at noon, Peter can be seen running towards a church. Without hesitation, he swings the door open and calls for his love, Lovelia. Interrupting her prayers, Lovelia confesses she was actually waiting for him. The lovebirds then hold each other's hands and become happy about how her stubborn guildmaster father finally agrees for them. Lovelia then reveals that now they have to work and give a strong heir to their family. Peter, out of curiosity, asks her how she thinks babies are made, and the innocent Lovelia reveals the same story of the stork that you guys had heard from your parents as well. Peter then adores her innocence and blames her strict father for brainwashing his daughter. Lovelia then invites Peter to pray with her, and they both pray together. Later at night, after taking a shower, Peter comes to his bed and is surprised. It's the ogre sisters from before, asking for his juice. Peter gets furious and kicks them out. After hearing all the commotion, Peter's neighbors come out. And of course, they misinterpret the situation after watching two hot ogre girls outside of his room, forcing my man to take the girls back in. While back in the room, Peter tries to make them understand that he can't do what they want because he is engaged to Lovelia. But the sisters reveal that they know about it, and surprisingly they don't mind it at all. The following morning, the girls can be seen sleeping on his bed while he is sitting depressed on how he let his vile desires win. At that moment, Lovelia knocks on his door. This freaks out Peter so much as he does not want Lovelia to find out about the ogre sisters. So, he picks up the ogre girls and puts them in his closet. Peter opens the door after quickly setting his room back to normal. Lovelia is rather surprised to see Peter as he is sweating so much, but he plays it off, claiming that he was just busy with a morning workout, or should I say all-night workout. Lovelia then proceeds to enter Peter's room while he seems to be nervous because of the ogres he is hiding in his closet. Lovelia tells him that she is lucky to have a man who does not become arrogant after winning. Peter seems to be extremely happy at getting a chance to marry such a nice girl. Lovelia asks Peter to follow her to the guild so they can get her father's approval. Peter reveals that he became the strongest man in the world only to get approval from Lovelia's father for their marriage. Peter believes that this time her stubborn father will definitely agree to their wedding. But old man Sanctos is so angry at Peter that he even tries to attack him. Despite previously saying yes, Sanctos continues to be against marrying his daughter. When he tries to remove Peter from existence, Lovelia steps in and threatens to leave her father. The old man had to give in this time as Lovelia was even willing to leave him for Peter. Sanctos gives Peter a scary stare, and that marks their official engagement. Later at night, the whole guild starts celebrating, and a huge party is arranged. Meanwhile, Peter enjoys a nice moment with Lovelia on the balcony. But every good thing comes to an end as Lovelia has to leave Peter at the dinner table alone as her father wanted to talk. Peter is pretty happy that his engagement is official, but just at that moment the ogre girls arrive to congratulate him. Peter assumes that his engagement should have solved the problem involving these girls, but he was completely wrong as the girls now are just happy to be Peter's secondary wives. The girl tries to have his way with Peter, but he hears Lovelia's steps approaching him. So, Peter, by using his all IQ, comes up with an idea to hide the girls under the dinner table while he sits commando from below. A couple of moments later, Lovelia returns to eat with Peter again, but the guy is in serious trouble now. As if keeping a straight face wasn't already hard enough for Peter, the situation gets worse when old man Sanctos comes to the table and tells Peter to move. The old man wanted to sit there and talk with Lovelia, but Peter had to take a gamble there since he didn't want to leave Lovelia's side after all that effort. Peter tells Sanctos that he won't move as a sign of his commitment, and with such words, he somehow manages to win Lovelia's heart again. Sanctos wanted to crack Peter's skull there, but he had to leave crying since Lovelia was on Peter's side. The engagement party concludes at the end, and on the next morning, Peter is standing on the balcony, feeling good for having someone like Lovelia on his side and depressed for getting involved with the ogre girls again. It seems like Peter's lucky night has finally come. He and Lovelia are about to make love, but suddenly when he approaches to touch her talons, he feels something stiff. The next moment, Peter has a scary nightmare about his soon-to-be father-in-law, Sanctos, before he wakes up to find an elf girl. The problems don't seem to stop anytime soon for Peter though, when one of his friends, Tim Robinson, barges into Peter's room because of all the commotion, and after finding his friend Peter and the elf girl in really weird position, he misunderstood the situation and steps out saying he will keep Peter's secret to his grave. Later on, the elf girl kicks Peter away and reveals that she was trying to steal his juice. The elf is a super smug girl named Vegan Eldriel. Vegan starts explaining her reason for coming after Peter, more like bragging about her elf kind is superior to every kind, but due lack of physical strength their race is going through quite a hard time. She then concludes how she wishes to also have his seed and have kids with Peter, essentially for the sake of saving the elf race. Peter reveals that it sure makes him happy when cute girls approach him, but he then points out to his weapon, who seems completely uninterested because of her childlike physique. And as he rejects Vegan's request, out of rage, Vegan casts a forbidden curse on him before leaving and warns him that he will come back to her. Peter feels completely normal for now and thinks of her curse as bluff since he never heard of it before. In another part of the forest, Lovelia and her team are on an adventure. Her crew suggests that they should stop their journey for now because it could become dangerous as night falls. But before they could make a decision, a scary creature corners them. Back at the Adventurers Guild, Peter is chilling out when he gets some alarming news from a girl named Mitch. She comes in all worried and out of breath, saying a messenger brought news about Lovelia. Apparently, she was exploring and got attacked by a giant worm-like goblin. Peter, hearing about the monstrous creature, immediately springs into action to rescue his fiancée. He quickly mounts a horse and rides as fast as he can to help Lovelia. Meanwhile, Lovelia and her comrades are hiding in a cave, but they're in serious danger because the worm goblin has found them. The goblin starts to rip her clothes and wraps its tentacles around her. It's a terrifying situation that's getting worse by the minute. The worm goblin uses his tentacles in a really weird way, but fortunately Peter somehow manages to reach just before Lovelia could have gotten seriously hurt, or the worm goblin had his way with her. Peter immediately jumps and cuts the monster's arms off to free his fiancée. After finding out that his fiancée is okay, Peter takes his attention towards the beast and tells the goblin that he will pay for hurting his fiancée. Meanwhile, from the distance, the rest of the adventurers are wondering whether Peter would be fine to fight such a monster alone, but his friend Tim says that he is enough down there. Peter proves why he's known as the strongest guy around by quickly jumping onto the goblin's back and completely overpowering the creature. He gives the goblin a serious beating, showing off his incredible strength. Peter's impressive display of strength surprisingly has a bit of a downside. It only makes the ogre girls, who are watching everything from afar, even more excited and even more fascinated by him. They're more motivated than ever, and their interest to get into Peter Pants only grows. Later, Peter has a nice moment with Lovelia. But at night in a public bath, he notices the curse making his body act funny around other women. Vegan appears again and tells him to beg. Peter refuses, but suddenly he hears a similar voice from the next hot water bath, and yes, the voice is no other than Lovelia. Lovelia tells him that she is thankful for saving her, and the twist comes when Lovelia invites him to her steam bath so they can talk about how to make a strong heir. Listening to this, Peter gets extremely happy, but he can't appear in front of Lovelia because of his Excalibur sword. In order to save himself from embarrassment, Peter begs in front of Vegan, but she informs him that she can't do this as it will only have a reverse effect, so the only way to be free is to give his load to Vegan only. Peter had to give in to Vegan's blackmailing, and literally beg her to take his load. The following morning, Peter is sitting in shock beside Vegan, who wakes up and compliments him for having good moves. All the recent events have brought Peter and Lovelia even closer together, and this is causing Sanctos a lot of emotional distress. Feeling alone and in pain, the old leader receives a letter from a partner nation that changes everything. Now, Sanctos is scheming to bring about Peter's downfall. The next day, Sanctos summons Peter and tells him that he will be going to a marriage proposal meeting with the orc princess, Piggled Pansetta. Peter is taken aback by this, especially since he's already engaged to Sanctos' daughter. But before he can voice his objections, Lovelia, who has overheard the conversation, joins them. Sancto's assistant frames the situation as being crucial for the welfare of Peter's nation. Despite Sancto's assuring Peter that he does not have to accept the proposal, Peter decides to go along with it. As he's sitting with Piglet's father, Peter convinces himself that he'll be repulsed by the appearance of an orc princess. But he's surprised to find that Piglet looks more or less human. Sanctos, with a smug smile, asks Peter to show Piglet around town. Peter does as requested, but when he notices that Piglet seems uncomfortable, he takes a moment to sit with her in an alley and comfort her. Piglet is insecure about her appearance, but Peter reassures her and even protects her from some random thugs. So, after Peter and Piglet spent the whole day exploring the town together, night finally came. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the time for Peter to give his answer. He was very clear, saying that he was interested but not completely satisfied. Then, Sanctos did something unexpected. He sent Peter to a special room. Outside, the old man could be heard laughing to himself. It feels like he's celebrating because his plan to ensure Lovelia's safety is finally moving along. Peter's father-in-law Sanctos, his assistant and roast pork babe decide to use their triumph card as they sneakily slipped a love potion into Piglet's drink that made her feel, well, a little more romantic than usual. All the while, Piglet is telling Peter Grill that she has made up her mind about doing something to him. This catches Peter off guard because he thought she was against whatever she's now decided on. Peter tries to push her back, telling her that he's actually engaged to another woman named Lovelia. But Piglet is not fazed and stays firm on her decision. She tells him that she's okay with it and nudges him into bed, explaining that it's pretty normal for orcs to have more than one partner. Peter is quick to point out that this whole situation feels like a setup, like they're being lured into a trap. When Piglet hears Peter's words, she steps back, tears starting to well up in her eyes. She confesses to Peter that she always thought she wasn't pretty enough. But Peter, being the good guy that he is, reassures her, telling her she's not just pretty, but beautiful. This leads to a moment where Piglet leans in to give him a kiss, and Peter can feel his willpower starting to waver, as Peter tries to calm down and gather his thoughts. Piglet starts getting ready. When Peter sees her without her top, he can't resist the strong desire that's right in front of him. It's like he's drawn to her and can't control himself anymore. When morning comes, Peter is filled with sadness over his actions. He's aware that he fell into a trap, and his defeat came from a pair of boots. Now, he's afraid that if Piglet talks about what they did, Sanctos might end his life. As Piglet wakes up, he pleads with her to keep their secret. He asks her if she wants to be a puppet for their political agenda or if she wants to make her own choices in life. After having a meeting with Albatross and Babe, and giving a lot of thought to what she truly desires, Piglet declares that Peter didn't lay a hand on her. However, she felt a strong bond with him and asks to be moved to Peter's guild. She wants to stay by his side and take care of his needs while working towards a bright future for Orphan. Babe and Albatross give their immediate approval. Later on, Piglet explains that after a lot of consideration, she decided that what she really wants is to stop Orphan from obtaining Peter's seed. Once she has children with Peter, she plans to train them well and use their strength to defeat those from Orphan who turned her life into a nightmare. The following day, Piglet is getting dinner ready for Peter when the both ogre sisters Mimi and Lisa show up, but things get tense when that annoying flat elf brat Vegan shows up, who is unhappy to see an orc and an elf in the room. Vegan insists that Peter's children should be elves, suggesting they settle the matter with a fight to the death. However, Lisa easily knocks her down. There's a lot of confusion among the girls, as they all want to have children with Peter. Piglet clarifies that she never planned to have Peter all to herself and is okay with being one of his lovers. This surprises the other three. Vegan misinterprets Piglet's words as mockery and wants to curse her, but Peter immediately stops her. Since conflict seems inevitable, Lisa comes up with a great idea that they should determine their ranks by competing with their feminine charms. Everyone agrees to this. Vegan then brings out a Gabe, a childlike fairy with a screen on his hand that can measure a man's excitement. Vegan lays out the rules of the game. The one who can stir up the most excitement, and Peter wins. The ogre sisters immediately undresses and engage in a playful display, which sends Peter's excitement levels soaring to 91, causing a noticeable reaction in his shorts. Seeing this, Vegan rushed into Tim's room in search of a rizzing outfit. She appears in a revealing swimsuit that leaves little to the imagination. But due to her lack of curves, she only manages to score a 3. This frustrates Vegan because she's unable to provoke the same reaction from Peter. Next, it's Piglet's turn. However, she's already dressed in just an apron, and without even trying, she matches the ogre's score of 91, causing a similar reaction in Peter. The girls can't seem to find common ground, as Vegan insists that they shouldn't use their curves to their advantage. They tease her for not having any herself. Tim comes in, looking drunk. Peter asks him to help stop the argument, but Tim says the best way is to have a drink. So, they all start drinking, and for a while, the argument is forgotten. However, it's not long before they start trying to play Peter with more drinks. He quickly catches onto their plan. They want to get him drunk and take advantage of him. He resolves to resist the temptation, but then one of the girls goes commando. Peter stirs from his sleep in the morning, finding himself surrounded by the girls. He's filled with worry, wondering if he's let down Livelia once more. He wakes up Vegan to ask her about the events of the previous night. She tells him that he was so excited that even a Gape couldn't handle it, as his levels were through the roof. As the rest of the girls wake up and tensions start to rise again, they decide to prevent a repeat of last night's situation. They all agree on a set of rules regarding Peter's involvement with them. The girls get together to figure out rules about when and how they can spend time with Peter Grill. After a bit of bickering, they finally come to a decision, and Peter agrees to his new daily schedule until his first day off arrives. Peter can hardly contain his excitement as he gets ready for his date with Livelia. He spends the day shopping with her, followed by a nice dinner. Just as he's soaking in the joy of his time with Livelia, Mimi unexpectedly shows up. Peter reminds her that it's his day off, but she replies that it's all the more reason for him to be hers alone. This irks Peter as she's not respecting their agreement. Livelia notices that Mimi and Peter have been spending a lot of time together recently, and Peter explains that Mimi asked him to assist with her combat training. Just as Mimi is about to spill the beans, Peter quickly pulls her into the restroom. Inside, he pleads with her not to ruin his date, but Mimi has other plans. After a quick encounter, Peter returns to Livelia, only to find Vegan waiting for him. She also wants a quick moment with him, claiming that it's her turn on his day off. However, when he gets back to Livelia, Lisa is now there and he has to whisk her away to the restroom too. Meanwhile, Livelia is left waiting, sipping on wine and reminiscing about old times with Peter and how he bravely protected her from a monster. Once dinner is over, Peter feels the need to apologize for the way the girls interrupted their date. However, Livelia reassures him, saying she understands because he's so well liked. She mentions how lovely it would be for them to escape somewhere peaceful, away from their responsibilities at the guild. Peter wholeheartedly agrees with her. As Livelia departs, Peter can't help but feel overwhelmed by the girls' demands. He worries about how much more of this he can endure while still maintaining his relationship with Livelia. He's concerned that the girls' constant interruptions are pulling him away from her, and he's uncertain about how much longer he can keep up this balancing act. After his date with Livelia, Peter decides to unwind with a relaxing bath, even though he feels like the date didn't go as planned. Unexpectedly, Piglet joins him in the bath and offers to help him wash his back. She assures him that she's there to help ease his troubles, and she promises not to cause him any harm. As Peter voices his concerns, Piglet removes her towel. Peter can't help but be rizzed by her figure, and one thing leads to another, and they end up being together. What surprises Peter even more is the discovery that the other girls have also been in the bath the whole time and have witnessed everything. The girls are quick to point fingers at Piglet for breaking their agreement, but Piglet fires back, saying they were the ones who broke the rules first. Given the circumstances, the girls decide to take turns, and they all eagerly jump on Peter for another round of fun. Peter reaches his breaking point and starts splashing water around, questioning the purpose of rules if they're just going to be broken. Mimi responds that there's no penalty for breaking the rules, which is why they feel free to disregard them. Realizing there's no end in sight, Peter's mind goes into overdrive and he bolts, wanting to escape from it all. But he soon realizes he can't just abandon Livelia. As he sits alone, an ogre appears and offers to lend an ear to his problems. Peter confesses that he's made a lot of bad decisions, but he can't stop thinking about Livelia. The ogre shares that love can't be controlled, and he's also new in town, searching for a woman who has captured his heart. He's been on a 3-year quest to find her and has finally heard that she's in the Apache Warriors Guild. The ogre assures Peter that if his love is genuine, the gods will guide him with their blessings. Feeling more hopeful and motivated, Peter shares that he's also a part of the guild and asks the ogre about the woman's name. The ogre reveals that she's the most powerful warrior and princess of Ogrestan, Lady Lisa Alpacas. Peter is taken aback to discover that Lisa is a princess. Peter rushes over to Lisa, eager to confirm if the rumors about her being royalty are true. Lisa is curious about where he heard this information but confirms that she is indeed the next in line for the throne of Ogrestan. Meanwhile, at the guild's reception, Michi is happily flipping through a magazine, admiring the muscles of the men featured in it. Suddenly, Antonio Spartocos makes an appearance and she is completely awestruck by his impressive physique. Antonio tries to introduce himself, but he quickly realizes that Michi is too absorbed in her admiration to pay him any attention. Just then, Mimi arrives, inquiring if there's any work available for them. Antonio is taken aback by her sudden appearance. Peter expresses his concern to Lisa about the potential international scandal that could surface if he were to rizz a foreign princess like herself. However, Lisa reassures him that she's only interested in his genes and once she has a child, she'll depart without revealing his identity. She then leads Peter to bed. Meanwhile, Antonio, following Mimi's directions, makes his way to Peter's place in search of Lisa. He hears her voice and decides to enter the room, only to be taken aback by the sight of Lisa and Peter in bed together. Overcome with rage, Antonio punches a hole in the wall and flings Peter outside. He then charges at Peter with his axe. Peter, caught off guard, has no choice but to defend himself with the only thing he has at hand, a banana. The banana is on the verge of breaking under the onslaught. But just in time, Lisa steps in and orders Antonio to halt his attack. Inside Peter's room, Antonio pleads with Lisa to come back to their homeland, explaining that their armies are struggling without her. Lisa, however, tells him that she can't return just yet. She shares that her 3-year-long journey has led her to Peter, and she desires his child, as the tradition of ogres is to always strive for a stronger generation. Antonio is puzzled by this, and Lisa points out that he and the other ogres in Ogrestan are even weaker than her. She says if there was a strong man in Ogrestan, she wouldn't have to do all this in the first place. Hearing this, Antonio says that he has become much stronger over the past 3 years and wants to show it. He then challenges Peter to a duel to prove his strength. Word quickly spread about the upcoming duel, and a crowd gathered at the arena, excited to watch the match. People are talking, thinking the whole problem started because of a woman. Peter, who already has a fiancé, is assumed to be challenged by the ogre, Antonio, who wants to gain confidence to propose to his crush. Surprisingly, Peter accepts the challenge without any obvious personal gain. As the duel approached, Peter had a realization. He understood that if he were to lose the fight, Antonio would take Lisa back to their country, which would, in turn, solve one of Peter's own problems. Peter makes up his mind to purposely lose the match. But just then, Lisa steps in, pointing out Lovelia in the crowd with Mimi next to her. Lisa warns Peter that if he wants to keep their relationship under wraps, he shouldn't even consider the idea of intentionally losing the match. Suddenly, Peter understands that his thoughts were as clear as an open book, and he can't just throw the match anymore. As soon as the duel begins, Antonio gets into a position that Tim Robinson instantly recognizes as the Gigan-style double tomahawk, a powerful and unbeatable technique used by the formidable army of Ogrestan. It's said that no living creature can bear the crushing force of the vortex spins this move creates. Antonio then reveals a secret. He has been in love with Lisa since they were children. To win her over, he has not only honed his combat skills but also upheld a strict code of purity. The crowd, upon hearing that Antonio is a cherry boy, feels sympathy for him and begins to cheer for Peter to lose. However, Peter can't just let himself lose. As Antonio charges at him using his Gigan-style technique, Peter effortlessly defeats him with a single swing of his weapon. This causes the crowd to be mad at him. Lisa declares Antonio as the loser, stating she has no interest in weaklings. Despite his loss, Antonio pleads for another chance. Peter, feeling a bit sorry for him, asks Lisa to cut him some slack. Lisa agrees to give Antonio another shot and announces that he will fight her in a week's time. Once the crowd disperses, Peter makes up his mind to leave as well. But Antonio intercepts him, expressing that he has always been helpless against Lisa. Having experienced Peter's strength firsthand, Antonio asks if he could become his student. Vegan and Piglet chime in, encouraging Peter to accept Antonio's request. They explain that if they train Antonio and he ends up winning, he would take Lisa back to their homeland. After giving it some thought, Peter decides to agree to Antonio's proposition. Peter takes on the task of training Antonio, with Vegan lending her magical abilities and Piglet contributing her culinary skills to help boost Antonio's muscle strength. One day during lunch, Peter spots Mitchie and can't help but wonder why she's there. Piglet provides an explanation, saying that Mitchie has been frequently visiting, bringing packed lunches for Antonio. She thinks that Mitchie might have feelings for Antonio. Finally, the day of the duel arrives. Antonio and Lisa make their way to the arena, ready for their face-off. As the duel between Antonio and Lisa begins, Peter is filled with confidence, believing that Antonio has become stronger than Lisa. However, he notices something strange. Lisa wears a smile on her face, and Antonio seems to be moving slower than usual. It dawns on Peter that Lisa is using her physical attributes, particularly her talents, to distract Antonio, making it difficult for him to take his eyes off of them. With this realization, Peter understands that the fight is practically over. Moments later, Lisa defeats Antonio, and Peter remarks that Antonio's decision to remain a cherry boy ultimately cost him the victory. Antonio wakes up later, realizing he's lost again. Peter understands that if they were to request a rematch, the outcome would likely be the same. When Mitchie comes to see Antonio, Peter comes to the conclusion that Antonio needs to become more comfortable around women. Peter takes Antonio aside and shares with him that Mitchie has a preference for guys with big muscles, and he could definitely win her over. He explains to Antonio that he can't defeat Lisa because he's too easily rizzed by women and needs to gain more experience by interacting with them. Antonio is not too thrilled about the idea of losing his cherry to anyone other than Lisa. However, Peter asks him if he feels a flutter in his heart when Mitchie is around. Antonio does not deny it but insists that he's dedicated to Lisa. Peter points out that this is the issue. Antonio is limiting himself to only one possibility because he's so fixated on Lisa. Overhearing their conversation, Mitchie joins in and admits that while she knows Antonio loves Lisa deeply, she also has deep feelings for Antonio. Hearing this, Antonio starts to fall for Mitchie too, and Peter decides to leave them alone to sort out their feelings. The following day, after spending an intimate night with Mitchie, Antonio experiences a change. Peter tells him he's now ready to face Lisa. However, Antonio admits he was right about being overly focused on one woman. When Mitchie appears, Antonio's heart melts and he confesses he's already forgotten about Lisa before leaving with Mitchie. Shortly after, Lisa arrives and expresses her gratitude to Peter for guiding Antonio, acknowledging his exceptional leadership and soldier skills. She poses a question to Peter about what his definition of true happiness is. Would it be marrying a naive woman and having Albatross as a father-in-law, or something else? She suggests that if he chooses her, he could rule a nation. After Lisa leaves, Lovelia appears and seeing her smile, Peter realizes that this is his true path to happiness. She tells him that the goblin invasion has begun and they need to leave immediately. They plan to take a vacation once the mission is over. In the meantime, the elite hobgoblins make their appearance, along with Peter's sister. After that, Peter's health starts to decline because of the fantasy life he's been living with the girls. This makes him unable to provide his juice. He thinks it is blessing in disguise as he believes the girls won't bother him anymore, but jokes on him as they surprise him by using magic to restore his energy. Lovelia's father announces war with goblins, so Peter takes charge of the Swordsman's Guild and initiates attacks. This decision comes after he learns that a human village has been attacked by goblins. Piggled, Ogre Sisters, and Vegan, who are eager to claim Peter's mushroom sauce, don't leave his side and decides to fight besides him. The group soon reaches the village and uncover that the attack was carried out by a group of female goblins. These goblins target human males with the goal of obtaining human genes for reproduction. The guys can't stand up to the powerful goblins, so all they can do is hope and pray. But Peter, with his incredible strength, manages to take down a bunch of goblins all by himself. And the girls who have been following Peter, they jump right into the fight too. Before you know it, they capture the goblins who invaded the village. And that kinda solves the problem for now. But here's the crazy part. After the battle, the girls ask Peter to give them reward for being brave in the fight. Poor Peter, he's being bothered by them. And then he gets some news from his team. Turns out, his fiancée Lovelia has been captured by some goblins. As soon as Peter hears about this, he quickly gets away from the girls and rushes to the goblins' camp to save Lovelia. Peter is so strong that the goblins are scared of him. They tell him to drop his weapons or they'll hurt Lovelia. Lovelia, worried for Peter, begs him to get away. But Peter, not wanting her to get hurt, gives up his weapon and lets the goblins take him prisoner. What he does not see is that when Lovelia shouts his name, a goblin with blue hair looks really surprised. After that, Peter and Lovelia are put in a cell together. Peter tries to calm Lovelia down and promises her that he'll keep her safe. But then the goblins take him away. They want to give Peter's genes to the Goblin Queen. Peter notices that goblins with high rank have more humane looks. He tries to make himself feel better by thinking that the Goblin Queen, being a high rank, might actually be pretty. But when he finally sees her, he realizes he's wrong. The Goblin Queen is the ugliest goblin he's ever seen. So, here's what happened. Peter finally gives in and hands over his dignity and genes. Just after, he's taken to a lonely cell. He does not have a key, and there's no escape route. Just when things are looking really bad for him, a goblin with blue hair comes to his rescue and gets him out of the cell. Peter is totally puzzled and asks the blue-haired goblin why she came to his aid. As they start chatting, he learns about her backstory. The blue-haired goblin, who goes by the name Gabuko, was adopted by Peter and his sister Lucy when she was just a little goblin. They all lived together just like a real family, and it was a happy time. But then, the human army, who were total pros at hunting down goblins, got their hands on Gabuko. Thankfully, the Goblin Queen came to her rescue. After Gabuko spills the beans about her past to Peter, they share a really emotional hug. They're both over the moon to be reunited and are eager to be a family again. Peter then tells Gabuko that he has to help and leave with Lovelia and asks her to help him navigate his way out. Without a moment's hesitation, Gabuko agrees to help him. As they're on their way to find Lovelia, Gabuko suddenly starts blushing. She tells Peter that there's a time each year when goblins go wild, and the only way she can calm down is if she gets Peter's genes. Peter is totally taken aback by this Sweet Home Alabama information and does not know how to react. Meanwhile, the group in the human village has been waiting for Peter for a long time, but he's nowhere in sight. They suspect that Peter has been captured by the goblins. Determined to save him, they sneak into the goblin tribe. Along the way, they accidentally trigger a mechanism and fall into a cave, where they bump into Peter. After explaining what happened to Peter, they find out that the famous goblin hunter Kenji is also in the goblin camp, and he's got 2 tame goblins with him. The warriors have never seen a goblin that does not attack men, so they ask Kenji for advice on how to make the goblins less aggressive. Kenji tells them that if human men take the initiative with the goblins, they can make them normal again. As soon as he finishes speaking, he's hit by a stone. It turns out the other goblins have noticed the warriors and have surrounded them. The warriors do their best to fend off the goblins' attack and tell Peter to quickly find Livelia. Guided by Gabuko, Peter finds where Livelia is being held. But as soon as they rescue Livelia, the Goblin Queen shows up. The Goblin Queen is furious. She accuses Gabuko of betrayal and orders her minions to punish her. In that critical moment, Peter steps in, shielding Gabuko from the onslaught. However, he finds himself at a disadvantage as he does not have any weapons to fight the formidable Goblin Queen. His only option is to flee with Livelia and Gabuko. Just when it seems like the Goblin Queen is about to capture them, the human army arrives, just in the nick of time. They're able to overpower the goblins with their superior numbers and manage to defeat them. After the battle, the human army makes a harsh decision. They decide to execute all the captured goblins to prevent future attacks on humans. When Peter hears about the planned execution, it brings back memories of a painful time when Gabuko was taken away from him by the humans. He remembers the anguish he felt and the helplessness of not being able to do anything about it. The thought of the same fate befalling the goblins fills him with dread. He knows he has to do something, but he's unsure of what he can do in this situation. He's torn between his loyalty to his fellow humans and his sympathy for the goblins, especially Gabuko. It's a tough decision, and he knows whatever he decides will have far-reaching consequences. The fate of the goblins hangs in the balance, and Peter is the only one who can tip the scales. Peter truly feels that violence and bloodshed is not the answer to the ongoing war between humans and goblins. He is convinced that there must be a peaceful solution, a way for both races to coexist harmoniously. Suddenly, an idea comes to him, a method that Kenji once mentioned. With this newfound hope, he rushes to the human army, determined to prevent the execution of the goblin. He stands before the crowd and announces that he has found a solution to stop the goblins from causing harm to humans. Everyone is taken aback by this, intrigued by what he has to say. Following his announcement, he takes one of the goblins and retreats to a cave for the night. When Peter and the goblin emerge from the cave the next day, everyone is surprised. The once aggressive goblin is now surprisingly calm. The crowd is stunned, unable to believe the transformation they are witnessing. Inspired by Peter's success, the humans decide to follow his example. One by one, each goblin is taken into the cave, and when they come out, they are as calm as the first. The tension between the two races begins to dissolve, replaced by a sense of hope and possibility. Peter's method works, and it seems like a peaceful coexistence between humans and goblins is finally within reach. His belief in peace and understanding has paved the way for a new era of harmony and mutual respect. Peter's peaceful resolution to the long-standing conflict between humans and goblins has been a success. His efforts have not only brought peace but have also earned him the admiration and respect of everyone around him. In the evening, there's a big feast for him. Everyone is happy, laughing, and having a good time, quite different from the tense atmosphere before. Peter, tired from the battle, decides to drink a lot. He hopes it will help him relax. As he keeps drinking, he eventually gets really drunk and falls into a deep sleep. Peter wakes up confused. He's surprised to see Gabuko sleeping beside him and other girls in the room. He rubs his eyes, trying to understand. However, the events from the previous night are hazy because of the drinks. Peter sits up, trying to understand what happened. He sees people asleep in his room and wonders how they got there. Confused, he realizes the celebration took an unexpected turn. Sadly, he remembers sleeping with them while drunk and starts crying. Suddenly, Peter's eyes land on a letter that had arrived a few days prior. It was from his sister, Lucy, who had written to him about her plans to visit him soon. As he finishes reading the letter, a familiar voice calls out his name from the other side of the door. It's Lucy. Peter gets nervous because he knows Lucy doesn't like guys who are not faithful. Seeing him with these girls would surely make her upset. Without wasting any time, he quickly asks the girls to find a hiding spot in the room. Once he's sure they are out of sight, he opens the door to greet Lucy. As they engage in conversation, Peter learns that Lucy has heard about his marriage contract with Livelia. She had come to congratulate him on this new chapter of his life. But that's not all. Lucy, filled with excitement, shares some personal news with Peter. She tells him that she has found their father, who had betrayed and left their family years ago. This revelation leaves Peter speechless. The day had started with a grand celebration and had taken so many unexpected turns. He wonders what else the day has in store for him. The room suddenly feels too small, the air too thick, but he pushes his feelings aside, focusing on his sister and the news she has just shared. In a fit of rage, Lucy takes matters into her own hands and kills her father. She assumes Peter would share her joy, but all he can muster is a forced smile. His mind is filled with worry. If Lucy discovers the girls hiding in his room, he fears he might meet the same fate as their father. Much to Peter's horror, his fears come to life sooner than he thought. Lucy starts noticing feminine items scattered across Peter's room, including strands of hair that clearly don't belong to Luvilia. She jumps to the conclusion that Peter is being unfaithful and, in her fury, starts attacking him with her sword. Lucy's strength is overwhelming, and all Peter can do is run around in an attempt to dodge her attacks. Just when he thinks all hope is lost, his eyes land on the cupboard where Kabuko is hiding. An idea pops into his head. He swings open the cupboard doors and introduces Kabuko to Lucy. He lies, saying that Kabuko is a surprise he had planned for Lucy, and that all the feminine items she found belonged to Kabuko. Lucy, after confirming Kabuko's identity, is overwhelmed with emotion and starts crying. For now, she chooses to believe Peter's words, but the tension in the room remains, leaving Peter to wonder how long he can keep up this act. Meanwhile, the other girls are tucked away, hiding just outside the window. They see that Lucy is lingering in Peter's room, which worries them because they fear they won't get any time with Peter. So, they come up with a plan. They decide to send Piglet down to the main entrance of the room, with the task of drawing Lucy away. Piglet takes on the disguise of a member of the Brave Swordsman's Guild. She fabricates a story, saying she's heard tales of Lucy's formidable strength and has come to extend an invitation for Lucy to join their guild. However, Piglet's sudden appearance raises Lucy's suspicions. She decides to play along with Piglet's invitation, but not before she cunningly hides a listening device in Peter's room. With that, she leaves with Piglet, leaving Peter alone in the room. Once Lucy is out of sight, the girls who were hiding on the balcony seize the opportunity. They come out of their hiding place and, free of worry for the moment, they rush into Peter's arms. However, unbeknownst to them, Lucy's listening device is quietly recording every sound in the room, adding a layer of suspense to their reunion. Despite Peter's attempts to resist, the girls are relentless, declaring that they won't allow him to get away. Just then, Lucy bursts into the room. Seeing the girls with Peter, she jumps to the conclusion that Peter is being unfaithful. Peter struggles to come up with an explanation, but before he can get a word out, Lucy plays back the recording she had secretly made. Caught off guard, Peter is left without a response. Outraged by what she believes is betrayal, Lucy goes on a wild chase after Peter, showing no signs of mercy. Just when things seem to be spiraling out of control, Kabuko steps in. With quick thinking, Kabuko makes up a story, saying that the girls are merely training with Peter. This unexpected claim leaves Lucy taken aback, and she starts to think that the sounds on the recording could indeed be interpreted as combat training. Kabuko continues to explain, sticking to the training story. Gradually, Lucy starts to believe Kabuko's explanation. She begins to accept that Peter might not be cheating after all. This moment of realization brings a sense of relief to the room. Thanks to Kabuko's timely help and clear explanation, a disaster is avoided. In the days that follow, Lucy makes it a routine to visit the guild and work on her fighting skills, seeing this as an opportunity. The other girls decide to spend some time with Peter. However, they soon notice something unusual. No matter how they try to charm Peter, he seems unresponsive. They start to wonder if Lucy's presence has put too much stress on Peter, causing this unexpected change in his behavior. Wanting to help Peter relax, they come up with a plan to take him to a water park. The girls dress up in their swimsuits, looking absolutely beautiful. But to their surprise, Peter does not seem to be interested. Instead of enjoying the company of the girls, he sneaks off to a quiet room for some peace. Peter's reaction leaves the girls puzzled. They had hoped that the water park and their charming appearances would help lift Peter's spirits, but their plan does not seem to work as expected. Peter's lack of response makes them worry even more about his well-being. They start to think that maybe the pressure from Lucy's constant presence at the guild is affecting Peter more than they had initially thought. This realization makes them even more determined to find a way to help Peter relax and get back to his usual self. The girls, having predicted Peter's need for relaxation, are already waiting in the room, ready to give him a soothing massage. However, even this fails to bring Peter back to his normal self. This turn of events leaves Peter feeling hopeless and in a state of despair. In an attempt to wash away his worries, he decides to take a bath. Vegan, noticing Peter's distress, follows him, hoping to offer some comfort and reassurance. As they are talking, they suddenly detect an unfamiliar scent in the air. Vegan, with her knowledge of magic, recognizes this as the scent of elven magic. But before she can warn Peter or even react to it, the aroma overwhelms them. It's too late, and they both end up fainting. This unexpected incident adds to the mystery and concern surrounding Peter's condition. The girls, who were just trying to help Peter relax, are now even more worried about him. The presence of elven magic and their sudden fainting only adds to their worries. They are left with more questions than answers, wondering what could have caused this and how they can help Peter recover. The situation is becoming more complicated and they realize that they need to find a solution quickly. When Peter regains consciousness, he finds himself in an unfamiliar setting, an elven village. As he takes in his surroundings with a sense of unease, a young elven girl named Frutalia appears before him. She reveals to Peter that she was the one who brought him here. Frutalia explains her purpose. She has been tasked with having a powerful child with Peter, a child who would be the savior of the elven race. As she finishes her explanation, she moves to push Peter down, intending to fulfill her mission. Peter, however, resists her advances. He tells Frutalia that regardless of what she tries, his body won't respond to her. After verifying the truth in Peter's words, Frutalia decides to take a different approach. She recites an incantation, casting a spell on Peter. As she does, a purple pattern immediately materializes on Peter's body. With the spell, his body becomes incredibly sensitive, reacting to the smallest touch or sensation. The spell, while surprising, seems to be Frutalia's last resort in her mission to save her people. The situation is intense, with Peter caught in the middle of a desperate plan to save an entire race. With the spell taking effect, Peter's body begins to react. Much to his dismay, he realizes that Frutalia is on the verge of accomplishing her mission. Meanwhile, back in Water Paradise, Vegan is waken up by the other girls. They quickly notice Peter's absence. Vegan, with her knowledge of magic, quickly puts two and two together. She deduces that Peter must have been whisked away by the elf, Frutalia, based on the remnants of the magic she had sensed earlier. Without wasting any time, Vegan decides to head to the elven village to rescue Peter. However, the other girls are concerned about Vegan's safety. They know that the elven village could be dangerous, especially if Frutalia is desperate enough to kidnap Peter. They decide that it would be best if they all went together to support Vegan. So, they prepare themselves for the journey, hoping to reach the elven village in time to help Peter and ensure Vegan's safety. The situation is tense, but the girls are determined to do whatever it takes to bring their friend back safely. Despite their best efforts, the girls aren't able to keep up with Vegan and soon find themselves lost. Meanwhile, Vegan reaches the elven village, where she finds Frutalia playfully teasing Peter. Without a moment's hesitation, Vegan casts a spell on Frutalia. The spell makes Frutalia's body extremely sensitive, just like Peter's, and she is unable to continue her playful teasing. The spell can only be lifted by the one who cast it, leaving Frutalia helpless. Seeing this as their chance, Peter and Vegan seize the opportunity to escape from the elven village. They find a nearby forest to hide in and take a much-needed rest. Once they've caught their breath, Peter turns to Vegan with a question. He can't help but notice the striking similarities between Frutalia and Vegan in both personality and appearance. He wonders aloud about their relationship. With a sigh, Vegan begins to share a story from their past. She then reveals how they are actually sisters, but their relationship has always been a conflict. Vegan recounts one particular incident where she ate Frutalia's favorite pudding. This seemingly small act led to a huge argument between the two of them, one that nearly resulted in the destruction of the elven village. The story sheds light on the complex relationship between the two sisters and the depth of the issues they've had to navigate. The aftermath of their argument led to the sisters parting ways. The damage to the elven village was significant, and they were both held responsible. They had to pay a hefty sum as compensation for the damage, resulting in a massive debt for both of them. In order to repay her debt, Frutalia struck a deal with her creditor. The terms were unusual. She agreed to have a child with Peter, who was known to be the strongest man in the world. When Vegan learned of this, she couldn't bear to let Frutalia shoulder the responsibility alone. So, she decided to riz Peter before Frutalia could. Upon hearing Vegan's story, Peter suggested that Vegan should apologize to Frutalia and get together again. After all, it was clear that Vegan cared deeply for her sister. Encouraged by Peter's words, Vegan decided to return to the elven village with him. However, Vegan's pride got the better of her. Even as she apologized to Frutalia, she couldn't hide her arrogance. Her face twisted into an unpleasant expression, which Frutalia misinterpreted as a provocation. This misunderstanding added another layer of complexity to their already strained relationship. It seems that the journey towards reconciliation would be a difficult one for the two sisters. Following their heated conversation, the sisters began to engage in a magical duel. However, their magical abilities were evenly matched, which made it challenging for either of them to gain the upper hand. During the battle, Vegan remembered that Frutalia was still in a vulnerable state. She saw an opportunity to sway the fight in her favor by teasing Frutalia, which left her defenseless. Seeing her sister in such a state, Vegan planned to use a powerful spell to end the duel once and for all. However, just as she was about to unleash her magic, Peter, who had been observing the fight from the sidelines, stepped in. He bravely blocked Vegan's magic, effectively stopping the fight. Peter then took it upon himself to mediate the conflict between the sisters. He revealed to Frutalia that Vegan had intended to have his child first, not out of spite, but to help reduce the burden of their debt. This confession added a new layer of understanding to Vegan's actions and served as a turning point in their strained relationship. Upon hearing the truth, Frutalia is deeply touched by Vegan's selfless act. With Peter's help, the sisters manage to mend their relationship. Peter feels a sense of accomplishment for having played a part in their reconciliation. However, in the midst of the celebration, he overlooks a critical detail. The sisters still owe a significant amount of money, and the agreement to have his children is still in effect. Once their disagreements are put to rest, the sisters insist on fulfilling the agreement with Peter. Just as this is happening, a group of girls from the Lost Tribe arrive at the Elven village. They stumble upon the unusual scene of Peter with the two elf sisters. Taken aback, the girls express their discontent and demand to be included. Peter, who has already expended all his energy, is left at the mercy of the girls. What he does not realize is that back at the Brave Swordsman's Guild, Livelia's father is plotting against him. His scheme is to force Peter to end his relationship with Livelia. Unaware of the brewing storm, Peter continues to navigate the complex situation with the sisters and the newly arrived girls. As soon as Peter returns to the guild, he is immediately assigned a mission by Livelia's father. The current agreement between the guild and the Dwarven village is nearing its end, and it is Peter's responsibility to travel to the dwarf village to establish a new agreement. To do this, he must carry a sword that has been passed down through the generations within the guild. Livelia's father assures Peter that if he successfully accomplishes this task and returns with the sword unscathed, he will no longer stand in the way of Peter's relationship with Livelia. Overjoyed by this, Peter eagerly accepts the mission. After returning home with the sword, his curiosity gets the better of him and he decides to test the sword. Much to his shock, the sword splits in two. Peter is well aware of the importance of the sword to the guild. He knows that if the guild members find out that he has damaged the sword, they will undoubtedly oppose his relationship with Livelia. Given these circumstances, Peter suspects that Livelia's father may have intentionally damaged the sword beforehand in an attempt to frame him. The sword is made from unique materials, and only a handful of dwarves possess the skill to mend it. Peter, understanding the urgency of the situation, hurries to the Dwarven village. He inquires around and learns about a dwarf named Mithlim Netherland, renowned for her expertise in working with special materials. Upon reaching Mithlim's home, Peter witnesses a tense scene. Mithlim's father is kicking her from the house because she refuses to work. Amidst this chaos, Mithlim spots Peter. She recognizes him as a highly influential figure and is rizzed by him. When she learns about Peter's predicament and his need to repair the sword, she decides to help him. She leads him to her workshop, a place filled with tools and materials, where she spends most of her time creating and mending. Peter, on the other hand, is relieved to have found someone who can potentially fix the sword. He watches Mithlim with hope as she examines the broken sword, her face reflecting a mix of concentration and determination. He knows that the fate of his relationship with Livelia and his standing with the guild now rests in the hands of this skilled dwarf. Mithlim explains to Peter that she is not fond of laborious work, but she has a deep passion for research and invention. She believes that the only way she can avoid mundane work is by gaining substantial power, so she creates a powerful robot. To enhance the robot's strength, she needs to obtain strong genes. She proposes a deal to Peter. She will repair his precious sword if he provides her with the necessary genes, specifically 20 gals. However, Peter strongly refuses her offer. Left with no other option, Mithlim decides to use her robot, specifically designed to seize genes, to attack Peter. Her plan is to corner him into a special room where he will have no choice but to surrender his genes to escape. But things don't go as planned. When Peter fights back, the robot goes haywire and loses control. In a surprising turn of events, the robot ends up forcing both Mithlim and Peter into the room. Mithlim hadn't anticipated this outcome. She finds herself trapped in her own trap, alongside Peter. Now, they both need to figure a way out of this predicament. The room, once a part of her plan, has now become a challenge for her as well. Once they're confined, Mithlim seems quite calm. She is hesitant to return to her village where her father would force her to work. She'd rather stay put in the room than face that. Peter, on the other hand, is in a pinch. He has a prearranged meeting with the dwarves to form a pact, and he needs to get out of the room urgently. He attempts to force the door open, but it's futile. Mithlim reveals to Peter that the only way to exit the room is if he surrenders his genes. As the night falls, they end up sleeping in the same room, trapped together. In the meantime, Livilia's father sets out for the dwarf village along with his guild members. They intend to witness the agreement between Peter and the dwarves. However, everyone is taken aback when Peter does not show up in the dwarf village, everyone except for Livilia's father, who seems pleased. It appears that he had sabotaged the sword beforehand, framing Peter, and this was all part of his plan. Livilia starts to question Peter's absence and begins to dig deeper into the details of the agreement. As it turns out, the agreement states that the guild members would charge the dwarves a hefty sum for safeguarding them against monsters. But there's a catch. There hasn't been a single monster sighting near the dwarf village for a century, implying that the dwarves don't really need any protection. Realizing that the agreement does not serve any real purpose for the dwarves, Livilia suggests to her father that they should call off the agreement, but her proposal is swiftly dismissed. Her father has his own motives. He wants to continue exploiting the dwarves for their wealth. Despite her reservations, Livilia finds herself in a difficult position, unable to defy her father's wishes. Livilia is firmly set in her decision to build up her strength. She wants to be bold enough to face her father and voice her thoughts. The time has come for the official signing of the agreement, known as the Covenant. But there's one problem. Peter, a crucial participant, is nowhere to be found. The crowd starts calling out his name, their voices growing louder with each passing second. Amidst the growing concern and confusion, Livilia's father is the only one who seems undisturbed. In fact, he even has a bright smile on his face, as if he knows something that others don't. Suddenly, without any warning, the earth beneath them starts to shake. It's not a minor tremor but a violent one, strong enough to cause panic among the people. And then, as if the situation wasn't chaotic enough, a massive monster bursts into the scene. A monster suddenly appears in the dwarf village and everyone panics. The villagers run around, trying to find a safe spot. In the midst of all this chaos, Livilia stands firm. The sight of the monster only strengthens her resolve to become stronger. She knows that this is her chance to prove her worth, not just to her father, but to everyone else as well. The monster's body is as tough as a rock, making it immune to any attacks. This realization sends a wave of panic among the villagers. Just when things seem to be at their worst, Peter and Mithlin make a timely entrance. Peter, armed with an axe, steps forward to confront the monster. With a swift and powerful swing, he cleaves the monster in two. The crowd cheers, happy about Peter's strong and brave actions. However, there's one person who is not cheering, Livilia's father. Instead of celebrating, he seems intent on causing trouble for Peter. He questions Peter about the absence of the Holy Sword, a weapon that's supposed to be in Peter's possession. Peter is left speechless, not knowing how to respond. The truth is, the Holy Sword is undergoing repairs which are time-consuming. In order to arrive at the village in time to save everyone, Peter had asked Mithlin to transform the sword into an axe. An axe, being simpler in design, was quicker to forge. Peter's decision to switch to an axe was a strategic one. He knew that time was of the essence and that the villagers needed help immediately. Despite Livilia's father's disapproval, Peter's quick thinking and bravery had saved the day. His actions had proven that it's not the weapon that makes the hero, but the courage and determination to protect those in need. In that moment, Peter comes up with a brilliant response. He had realized that the agreement was unfair, so he fibs, saying he had turned the holy sword into an axe to symbolize breaking free from the unjust agreement. He proposes that in the future, the dwarves could trade their exceptional blacksmith skills for the protection of warriors. The recent battle was proof that the dwarves' craftsmanship held great value. Peter's selfless words resonate with almost everyone present, causing an uproar of voices calling for change. Under the pressure of the crowd's demand, Livilia's father has no choice but to amend the agreement according to Peter's requests. They agree on a new, fairer covenant. After the event, Livilia suggests that she and Peter should take a break and go out together. However, her father strongly disagrees. Tired of being treated like a child and having no say in her own life, Livilia boldly proposes to Peter that they should leave the guild together. Peter, who has been feeling overwhelmed by the attention from the girls in the guild and Mithlin, finds Livilia's proposal appealing. He happily agrees to go on a journey with her. This time, they will travel freely, without any interference from others. They look forward to their new adventure, where they can enjoy each other's company without any trouble. If you liked what you saw, consider subscribing to the channel and stay tuned for more quality uploads.